Hey guys, to own multiple rental units, you used to have to first buy your own home, then buy a second one a year or so later, and maybe a third as you saved enough down payment money. This has now changed with some adjustments by Fannie Mae to lower the minimum down payment on properties with 2 to 4 units to 5% starting November 18th, 2023. So is this the best news ever, or is there more to it that you might want to pay attention to? So please do me a favor by hitting the like button and subscribing. It really helps me share this information. Now, when you first get started in real estate, the dream is to own multiple doors and collect rent from each one of those doors. The problem is that the process can be very, very slow. When I first got started in real estate, I had to buy a home for me to live in and then save up for that investment property. The problem was that investment properties typically require 20% down, so it can take a while to save up that much, especially when you're first starting out. Now, Fannie Mae is working to figure out options to make housing more affordable, so they made this huge change. This program now allows new investors to buy multiple units for 5% down so long as they live in one of the units. So you basically become an owner landlord at the same time, right? This gives you the opportunity to buy up to a 4-unit home with 5% down. Now, the down payment prior to this used to be 15% for a 2-unit property and 25% down for a 4-unit property, which basically made it so that only seasoned investors could buy these types of homes. After all, it could take quite a while to save up $200,000 for an $800,000 fourplex. Now, instead of $200,000, it will be $40,000 if you live in one of the units. Now, there's a huge housing shortage in the US, and it appears to be increasing. So between 2012 and 2022, there were 15.6 million households formed. Now, that happens when a child grows up to be an adult, child's ready to leave the nest, right? They need their own housing. So while 15.6 million households were formed during that time, only 11.9 million housing units were built, causing a shortage. When you have a lot of demand and not as much supply, that drives prices up, right? Incentivizing the build of multifamily homes is one way to make up for that housing shortage. This can help if your goal is to create housing for others. So let's get into how it works and some of the risks. You're gonna need to know these, right? Now, when you buy a single family home for 5% down, you pay the entire mortgage yourself and you have to save separately for the down payment for the next unit in your empire. But when you buy a fourplex with 5% down, you can collect rent from the other 3 units, which helps you to offset the mortgage payment that you make. You wanna pay close attention to the rents that your area supports. Now, there are some areas in the country where rent on $1 million fourplex is $1,500 per unit, and others where they are $2,500 or more per unit for the same price range, right? So let's look at this example from a property in Georgia. Now, this property is a fourplex listed for $795,000. The rents currently collected are $1,400 per unit. So if we take this property and we put down the 5%, that is $39,750, which makes our loan amount $755,250. Now, mortgage rates right now are hovering around 8% on a 30-year fix, so that would make the payment roughly $5,542. In addition to that monthly payment, we still have property taxes of $483.92 per month, homeowner's insurance at about $300 per month, and mortgage insurance of about $450 depending on your credit score, for a total monthly payment of $6,775. So remember, mortgage insurance, anytime you put less than 20% down on a conventional loan, you have mortgage insurance, right? So keep in mind, rates are constantly changing right now, so you'll want to get an official quote to figure out what your payments will be. Now, if you move in and have all 3 units rented, you'll generate about $4,200 in rental income from the other 3 units, right? So that leaves the payment that you're responsible for at about $2,575.92. Now remember, these are fully amortized loans, so $500 of that is actually going to pay down the mortgage, and with the properties expected to increase in value a little over 2% over the next year according to Zillow, that means you could be sitting on just over $62,000 in equity after year 1, which is actually a return of about 50% on the money you initially contributed. It's an awesome return. Now, there are some risks that you need to be aware of, which we'll go into in just a moment. After living it for 1 year, you could move out, rent that unit out, and then buy another with 5% down. So you'd have a total of 8 units if you did this, right? In order to do this, you'll have to have at least a 620 credit score, but really, you'll want to be closer to 700 to get approved and for it to make sense as far as the payment goes. 620 is the minimum that the program requires, but it just doesn't make sense. It's hard to get approved at that 620. Now, there are loan limits, and your loan amount has to be within these loan limits displayed here in order to make it work. So also keep in mind that the down payment is not the only out-of-pocket cost you'll have. There are closing costs as well. Maybe you'll be able to negotiate to have the seller cover those costs. We're seeing that a lot lately. And again, I'd recommend that you get an official quote so you have an idea of how much these are going to be when you're requesting discussing that because it's likely to be $10,000 or more depending on your credit score, the price of the home, insurance costs, etc. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are some risks that you're going to want to pay close attention to if this is something that you want to do. Number one is you are responsible for the full payment. That means if a tenant's late or a unit's empty, you got to still make the full payment. Number two is repairs can be expensive. So if the water heater breaks, it's your responsibility to fix it. Make sure you have some money set aside for any unexpected expense because they do happen when you have real estate. Number three is you might not like your neighbors, these tenants, right? You might not like them. This can get a bit awkward, especially if they get behind on payments. So just something to be prepared for. Number four, housing market trends can change. So there's no guarantee that values will increase over the next year or so. If there's a drop in the market, be prepared to hang on until the next cycle, right? Real estate does go through cycles. Sometimes it'll dip a little bit, usually not too much with the exception of 2008, and then it goes back increasing, right? So there are cycles. At the moment, most experts believe that housing will continue to increase, but again, that could change depending on what data comes out. Now, there are many ways investors make money with real estate over time, and this video right here will go into it in a bit more detail so you know exactly what to expect. So hey guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.